Welcome to this week's episode of the Sports Biz Report by the Sport Management Student Union. I'm Kevin Rossi, and I'll present today on sports media. I'm joined by Kevin Murray, who will present on sports law, and Mike Proska, who will present on sports marketing. Later in the episode, we'll have Dr. Jim Reese, professor of sport management at Drexel University, talk a little bit about MLB ticket sales at the quarter point of the season and also a little career development. First, the roundup. In sports media this week, Tosh.0 did a hilarious take on 30 for 30, where he did 30 for 30.0, where it featured Ryan, the Nerf basketball god, from 20 years later. They got Bill Simmons, Jalen Rose, Spud Webb, and Daryl Dawkins to talk on the subject, and honestly, I don't know how you guys feel about Tosh, but I don't really like him, but it was hilarious.
If you haven't seen it, you have to see it. It's just great.
The part at the end where he uses the couch as a trampoline.
So good.
It's really funny. Forbes went in-depth with a piece about Senator John McCain's proposed cable TV bill. This would be to fight against the current cable TV setup and go to a la carte pricing. There's obviously positives and negatives to this. Positives would be people who don't watch sports don't have to pay $5 a month for ESPN, and then the RSNs, which are getting way more expensive these days. Bad is that people won't get the lower level channels that are bundled in with the ESPNs. So less variety. I guess you can't watch your reruns of SVU all day, every day, on no matter what channel. But yeah, it would be called the Television Consumer Freedom Act, looking for a la carte pricing. It's something to watch into the future. And the NBA started talking about its upcoming media rights deals. They expire in 2 years, which usually leagues look to renew or open contract negotiations to renew 1 year out. They're starting 2 years out, which may make sense with the current climate for media rights deals being so high and with Stern retiring in February of 2014. Their current deals are with ESPN and Turner Sports and average about $930 million a year. Now we're going to have Fox Sports looped into that in the negotiations. Probably not CBS. Probably not NBC either. We'll see, but Fox will definitely drive up those prices, and with pricing the way it is and viewership for the NBA the way it is, that $930 million is sure to see a big increase. That's it for sports media. Now over to Kevin Murray for sports law.
So a few legal things to talk about this week. So the Kobe Bryant auction issue with his mom is very interesting and has just hit somewhat of another snag. The official trial date has been pushed back to June 17th. The trial being between Kobe Bryant and Gildan Auctions, based out of New Jersey, which is where Kobe's mom sold these items for a flat rate fee of $450,000 earlier this year, which she then later used to buy a house. Kobe has decided to take Gildan to court, as I mentioned, so basically Bryant's lawyer sent a letter to Gildan the day that the auction was meant to go live, and asked him to not put these items up for auction, as they don't belong to Kobe's mother. They belong to Kobe as they are his. And Gildan decided to continue with what he was doing. It's very interesting because Kobe's sister has now been quoted as saying, this is a quote, "My mother commented at the time that I should have Kobe sign my son's personal t-shirt so that she could sell it." So this has just gotten to a pretty low point. And I've heard a lot of, feedback in the media like, oh, Kobe should just buy her a new house. Kobe should just do this, should just do that. But considering some other quotes that we've heard, I don't really know where it's going to go next.
Is it lower than wealthy families paying disabled kids to follow them around Disney World so that they can cut lines, though? That's the question.
Wow. No, I don't think it's that. No, I haven't heard about that. Just dropped a bomb.
Apparently it's a real thing.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. Up next, Derek Fisher has been sued by the former NBA PA executive director Billy Hunter, who was ousted infamously Hunter is claiming that Fisher had a secret deal with owners during the lockout of 2011 that benefited himself, his publicist, and certain players in the league. The suit is seeking unspecified damages for defamation and breach of contract. It will be interesting to see what this does to the reputation of Derek Fisher, not only as the Players Association's president, but generally as a player who's pretty highly respected not only by other players in the league, administrators, but also just as the fans. He doesn't really have a negative, nobody has a negative view of Derek Fisher. So we'll see what happens. A few little quick hits. Rutgers' hiring of Eddie Jordan has actually now come into question because he does not have a college degree. And now Rutgers is looking to hire assistant coaches and requiring the assistant coaches to have a college degree.
But he did the coursework. We swear. So he swears.
He swears. So it is really questioning. It concerns me deeply that he was hired without a college degree, yet they're going to require the college degree of the assistant coaches they're going to hire. If you want more on this story, check out Professor Dave O'Brien's post on collegesportbusinessnews.com for the full story. Lastly, Root Sports and the Mountain West Conference have announced a new TV rights deal that will become an annual, and Root Sports will become the annual producer and television host of 10 football games and approximately 25 men's basketball games per year.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Now over to Mike with sports marketing.
Hey everyone. The first deal I want to talk about today is the naming rights deal with the new 49ers stadium. So Levi Strauss actually won out this deal, and they are paying $220 million over the next 20 years to both the city of Santa Clara and the 49ers for the naming rights. And this deal has an option of extending for an extra 5 years for an additional $75 million. So basically this deal, it sort of surprised a lot of people. Because of the new stadium, it's very technological and innovative. A lot of people thought they would go with a .com company or someone that's making cables in the business of energy. But the 49ers sort of surprised us all. They wanted to go with Levi's because their company has been stable for over 200 years or something like that. So basically, that was the main decision the main factor in that key decision that they made. So along with this deal, Levi's is getting a lot for their money. So it works out to about $11 million per year. And they're getting, as for the assets they're promised 4 huge signs around the stadium, a pair of 50-yard line luxury suites, 52 club seats, access to host 4 events a year at the stadium, and then just plenty of perks that come along with joining such a big stadium and NFL team. So really my question is, I think Levi's got a really good deal out of this. I'm interested to see what other people have to say. But it's hard to really evaluate it until after a couple years or so.
I wish it was Wranglers, so then we could put Brett Favre on the top of the stadium.
Maybe he could come out of retirement again. He'll never be in the Hall.
Who knows? Who knows? All right, and then the second issue I want to talk about is in the MLS, and they have decided to end their license with Upper Deck trading cards, and now Topps will be their new official card. They've been talking for about 6 months, and they just signed a 6-year agreement. So Topps aims to release their first collection this July, and they have exclusivity on cards, player stickers, and sticker albums. And they're planning to make special cards for All-Stars and also autograph cards featuring Andrew Farrell, who was the first overall pick this year. So that's something to look out for. And Topps was interested in this because they already have deals with the English Premier League, and they saw how the MLS has been growing recently, and they decided to hop in and sort of get their foot in the door. They already work with the NFL and MLB and UFC, so they're sort of just taking over North American sports now.
Is there a market?
All right, thank you, Mike. Now we will welcome in Dr. Jim Reese, Professor of Sport Management at Drexel University, to talk MLB attendance and some career development tips.
So, if you just wanted to start with a quick, I know you have a very deep background in the industry. A brief overview.
Sure. this is my 14th year teaching, and prior to getting into academics, I worked a variety of things. So I've worked in 2 different college athletic departments. Done some consulting work for a NASCAR race team. I was vice president. I don't think you've ever seen World's Strongest Man, but I worked for the governing body, which is called IFSA USA, which is International Federation of Strength Athletes. And we were responsible for determining which 5 athletes from America went to the World's Strongest Man, which was held, at different places around the world. So, and then my 3 years, my whirlwind with the Denver Broncos, which was it felt like about 5 years because we had went to back-to-back Super Bowls, and it was just craziness. But it turned out when I went out to Denver to get my doctorate, and the Broncos happened along the way. And I really didn't know when I was going to doc school where I wanted my emphasis to be. And it turned out that ticketing became my passion. And so that when I left the Broncos after John Elway retired, which was kind of a good time to go, and they've won 2 playoff games since I left 14 years ago. And so I left, I think, at the right time, but I had an area that I was comfortable, doing research in and teaching students and sharing some of the things we did well, which we did a lot of things well, but we made some mistakes and sharing some of those mistakes with students as well as, those are the kinds of things that you can't get from a textbook that classes, in my opinion, better.
Absolutely.
And so, sales strategies. We do a little selling in the undergrad class as well.
Was your going into your career? Did you always want to teach? Was that always the idea? Or did that just
it's funny that you asked that, because as an undergrad, I wanted to go into teaching. I didn't know that I wanted to teach college, because that is what ultimately I wanted to do. But my dad said, "No, get a business degree. There's no money in teaching." And so I got a business degree, and then I spent 6 years in sales after college before I went back to grad school to get my master's and doctorate in education. But I wouldn't do it over again and change it. I mean, I wouldn't change anything because I'm happy. Everything kind of leads to get you to where you are now. But it's just ironic that even in high school, I had an inkling that I wanted to be an educator. And the one time I listened to my dad, I ended up going back in the direction that I wanted to go initially. So it's a funny story how that worked out. So
yeah, it seems to be working well though, which is good.
Well, I think I've got the best job in the world, and I always tell people that it's great that I get paid to stand in front of people and talk about sports. I do it for free on weekends, and I get paid to do it during the week. And I think that when you love your job, I think students can tell. I think they can. I think that you can tell when somebody enjoys what they're doing versus if they don't. There's a big difference. So I hope that communicates over in the classes.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it kind of speaks to all the professors here. They all kind of teach what they like and what they love, and in my 3 years, I think it's definitely shown through.
Well, I think that goes back to the leadership. I think Mr. O'Brien does an excellent job of hiring people with industry experience, which I think is crucial. Because not only do we bring real world experience, but we bring our contacts that we can try to help out with co-ops and placing and things like that, which we're always trying to do. But that's the fun part. There's something that's just awesome about helping someone break into the business and land a job or an internship or a co-op, and then to see them take off in the business.
Yeah.
Those are the little things, the little thank you cards that you get from time to time that make the job really worth it. So that's we've got
kind of touches on. I always say how I think sports industry, especially breaking into it, is so interesting because it's so competitive, but then also everybody's willing to help you out to get into it, and I think that's such a cool dynamic.
Well, I think everybody remembers when they were trying to break in, and obviously you can't hire everybody because there are limited positions, and some people are more qualified than others, but typically people are very willing to at least to talk to you or give you an informational interview kind of thing and share their insights. And it's competitive, and those that are really willing to put the hours in, I can't stress that enough from the standpoint of, you're not gonna make a lot of money when you first break in. It's the law of supply and demand. I remember trying to negotiate with my boss in Denver. I tell this story to students all the time, and I was a doc student, so I figured I would walk in and negotiate my $16,000 salary with the Denver Broncos in 1996. And my boss pulled out a stack of resumes, a big folder out, about 3 inches thick. And he said, "Jim, if you don't want the position at $16,000, I'm confident that I can find somebody in here that will take it." Okay, I'll take it. Thank you very much.
Here's your literal stack of leverage.
I had no leverage at all. I hadn't done anything.
Yeah.
And I think that students have to remember that you have to pay your dues. You don't start out making, unless you're in sales and you're selling maybe sweets or something like that, you can make $50,000, $60,000 first year out. But if you're going to work in some of the other areas where your compensation is kind of capped by just having a salary, the more people that are willing to do the job for a small amount of money, the harder it's going to be. Now, I always tell people, if you can make it 3 or 4 years, you can start making some money and prove yourself. You can start making some money that you can live on. But you have to be willing to go where the opportunities are and be willing to, sometimes start a little lower than you would like. And to be prepared to take advantage of that, you have to do multiple co-ops. So it's a really competitive and you really have to pay your dues and work hard all the way up to the hiring process just to be competitive.
So I guess we'll talk a little attendance and ticket sales.
Yes.
Mostly based around Major League Baseball because they're nearing the quarter-way point of their season already, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. Right now, there's only 2 teams that are averaging more than 90% capacity in their stadiums. Obviously, ticket sales are usually a little slow for baseball at the beginning of the year, but as we move into the summer, it gets better.
That's typically the case, yeah.
Is that something, though, if you're a team that's, middle of the range there, like 75 to, 85%, are you worried that, like, your product on the field is good and you're not selling tickets now, or are you just kind of waiting to see what the summer brings along?
Well, the summer is, and I'm not a baseball person, but I know many baseball people that we talk and share stories and things like that. But, the same thing is true for basketball. They have a lot of inventory in the fall and, when the season gets started and it gets more, we have fewer and fewer tickets near the end of the season as the playoffs come around. And I think the same is true for baseball. I think once summer, once kids are, starting to get out of college now and out of school and people have some time over the summer, I think, it always picks up for teams there. So I think, that is definitely the case. But the thing that's interesting about baseball is that you have certain teams, that, are able to, generally speaking, open their doors and people will show up. New York, Boston, places like that. But even the Yankees now, they have, I know a gentleman there named Dan Rosenthal who's he's the sales director there. The Yankees never had a sales department, but they do now because of all the club seats and the suites. Yeah. And they're constantly trying to fill those. And if you watch a Yankees game, as well as they're doing in attendance, generally speaking, if you look behind home plate, those $2,500 seats are not full.
No.
And so that's one of the things that Dan does and some other folks. So even your traditional teams that have done really well just by opening their gates are finding that they have to sell now, which is really interesting.
And actually, I was going to touch on the New York teams later on, so
okay.
We'll go right into that. Because the Yankees right now are at about 76% capacity, and the Mets are at 60%, which they have their own issues. But I mean, they're not too far into a new stadium right now. Is that something that you're worried about, especially with such big New York brands? And what would you do to maybe bring people to the stadium?
Well, there definitely is a new stadium factor. I think that we touched on that when we were emailing back and forth. And you mentioned, what you wanted to talk about. There is a novelty factor for new stadiums that for for the first year or two, people are going because they haven't been, and then you have a tendency for it to drop off a little bit. But the Yankees are. Historically, they haven't been a great customer service organization, but recently they've made some serious changes The last time that I was there, I was amazed at how well they've got people walking around with little signs that saying, "How may I help you?" And they were actually nice. I mean, I've spent some time in New York, and I'm a Philadelphia native, but I lived in New York for a while, and I can say that the customer service has gotten much better. So I was actually surprised at that number. But I think that the Yankees have a situation right now that, and I think Granderson just came back last night, but they've got a lot of star players that are out.
They've been devastated with injuries.
Yet they're still winning, and they're competitive right now, and their role players are doing a good job. And I think that when you see those, when you see Jeter and A-Rod and Teixeira and those, I'm trying to think if those are the only ones that are left. I think Hughes is out again, but he's not no disrespect, but he's not those other players. But I think when those big three get back, I think you're going to see more people coming out to the ballpark for the Yankees. But players do make a difference. Mm-hmm. There's no question. I don't, the Yankees are, and some other teams are known for spending a lot of money to get new players, and it helps drive attendance among other things. So I think the key, though, I don't want to get ahead of some of your questions, but I think the key is customer service. And building, one of the things in sales is that you want to build a long-term relationship with people. It's easier. You make your money on repeat business in sales, whether it's ticket sales or selling refrigerators or whatever it is, or cars. I mean, you make your money on repeat business. And, the Marlins, we had talked about them a little bit in our communications leading up to this meeting, every few years they win a championship and have a fire sale.
Yeah.
And, if you're a fan down in Miami right now, unlike Billy Beane, who's got the 29th payroll and he's making the playoffs.
Yeah.
The fans in Oakland, I don't know where they are in attendance, but they have confidence in their administration that they're going to put a winning team on the field with limited resources. And I think if you can do that and you can build that relationship with your fan base, that they know that, they know where you're going and you're committed and you're giving them good service. And, I think that goes a long way. And I don't think a lot of teams get that. And the reason why I say that is in Denver, I'm embarrassed to say that when I was there, I was a lot younger and I didn't get it as much as I do now. But we had this attitude that if you're not interested in the tickets, that somebody else will buy them. And that's just a horrible attitude to have because you're taking people for granted at that point.
Absolutely. And
we had that attitude, and it's an NFL epidemic actually, because NFL opens the doors and people show up. But you can't do that. You may be able to get away with it in the NFL, but you can't get away with that in other places. And I think that there's a problem with that. I think if you would see customer service go up, maybe you might have to spend a little bit more money to make more money. But, what we always say in ticket sales is it's about the experience. So you sell the sizzle, not the steak, because you can't control the steak. You can't control the quality of that. You can't control who gets hurt. You can't control who gets traded, things like that. What you can control is the experience that people have when they come out of the game. And that's what I think teams need to focus on. So.
Yeah, and I mean, even the NFL's hitting that wall with Jacksonville has struggled. They've been tarping off seats. And
which looks terrible.
Yeah. The A's, that's more for blackout purposes, right?
Yeah.
Then I guess it's better than empty seats on TV.
Yeah. But people know what the tarps are too, so.
Yeah. There's the balance.
The balance.
And then the A's, they have had the continued on-field success, but then they have the PR problem with trying to move and being blocked by the Giants, and MLB not really doing much to fix that.
Yeah.
But
I think the fans in Oakland, when any season starts, and they know that they've got the bottom, they're in the bottom of the barrel when it comes to the amount of money that they have to spend. Those fans know that there's a chance they're going to make the playoffs.
There's still that hope.
Yeah, and a legitimate hope, not just not just a hope that you're praying for a miracle, but they have a legitimate shot to make the playoffs. And it's good to be a fan. You can have it gets people excited for the start of the season, and it gets people to come out to the ballpark. You never know what you're going to see.
Definitely. So to the Marlins, they're kind of an interesting group down there. So last year was, they went out, signed all those free agents, and then also the first year of their new ballpark, their attendance went up not that much. It went up at the beginning of the year and then kind of dropped off. They ended in the 20,000 average. Mm-hmm. And this year, after the fire sale, they're back down to right around their numbers before the new stadium.
Yep.
So given the nightmare that is down there, what would you do to bring people to the stadium?
Well, that is a real tough one. If I were hired to go in there, the first thing that I would try to communicate is that the organization is committed to the fans, because what you have there is you have your diehards that are showing up, but you don't have any of the people have a lot of options with disposable income these days. Now, my wife and I have an 11-year-old, and everything revolves around him. So a play at our school where our son, wants to go or be involved in is actually competition for going to professional sporting events, because it's not just use of disposable income, but it's use of time that's available for people. And, sometimes you're so busy during the week that you don't want to do anything on the weekend. You just want to relax. So even, that even becomes challenging for people. But if you're a fan and you don't have confidence in the organization, and the organization appears to only do what's in their financial best interest, it makes you feel once again, going back to fans feeling appreciated. It's like, why should I show loyalty to you guys when you have a fire sale every couple of years, and we start from, it's a real downer for fans. So the first thing that I would try to do is try to get some kind of commitment from management that we're going to change the perception of the organization. And then it's just a matter of I'll give you an example of something that was done real well. That when I was at Ohio University, I went up and we took a group of students up and we met with the Columbus crew from the MLS. And the crew weren't very good that year. And they knew that they had a new facility, but they knew they were going to struggle with attendance. And they worked with the marketing office, and they came up with this hard hat campaign where they portrayed themselves as the hardest working team in MLS. And they had a whole bunch of promotional materials with them with hard hats on. And the gist of it was that they were going to be the hardest working team on the field, and they were going to build from there. And it worked extremely well, because as a fan, I don't know how you are, but I know as a fan, if my team's my favorite, the Broncos, I'm still a Broncos fan. Broncos are having a down year, which they've had, last couple of years prior to Peyton Manning getting there. If they're out there scrapping and working hard and they're diving all over the field, and you know that they're doing the best you can, I can live with that as a fan. And if the organization is using money wisely, going in the right direction, bringing the right people in and being committed to getting better and winning a championship, I can have patience. But I don't think that the fans feel that way in Miami. And so I would try to get the organization to be viewed in a more positive way. I would try to come up with some kind of a campaign to let the fans know that these guys are going to be playing hard, and they're going to be doing the best they can, absolutely get the most talent out of every person that we have on the team. And I think that would be, and then you have to make sure that your pricing is right. Baseball is notorious for having promotions and theme nights and things like that. We're actually, our sport management program, we're actually working with the Sixers on that right now. In my grad sales class, we're doing, students are working with the Philadelphia 76ers directly to do a theme night ideas for them, which they may implement next season, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
You have to connect with the community. Ideas of things that the Sixers do right now is they have Jewish Heritage Night, they have Cub Scout Night, and various things. They contact basketball leagues, youth basketball leagues. They do you got to reach out, and they may be doing some of those things right now and not getting some good response because of the way the organization is viewed. But you've got to reach out, and you've got to sometimes, as I said earlier, spend some money to make some money.
Yeah. And
it's you have to take a long-term approach. You can't. It's not a short-term fix. And that's how you build that culture over years, and you get to like the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Boston Red Sox, another example of the teams that even travel well.
Yeah.
Not just home, but you go to visiting a stadium and you take the place over with more of your fans than the home team has. and that gets really frustrating.
The Phillies in Washington.
And Washington is a perfect example. In fact, they call that Citizens Bank part of the South, I think, is what they refer to that as, down in D.C., so, or what the fans in Philadelphia refer to. So those are just some of the things. I don't think there's a magic bullet. I think in order to do it properly, you'd have to go down in that environment. I think you'd have to do some focus groups. You have to go out and talk to people and find out, okay, tell us how we're viewed by the fans. Tell us how you guys view the organization, and take some lumps and find out, okay, well, this is how we're being viewed. Now we can put an action plan in to kind of change that from there.
Yeah. And I think one of their big problems is that a lot of the negative public sentiment against them is stemming straight from ownership, which that's obviously difficult to change.
It is, and if you don't think, and I think I think there's a direct correlation to the attendance there because of that. You can say what you want about the Steinbrenners, but you know that they're committed to spending money to win championships.
Yeah.
That's without question. And I agree that you have to run your business smart. You can't just throw money away and lose money. It has to be, you have to do it like the Oakland A's do it. They stay within a budget and they do it. But you have to have a plan. You can't just go out and wing it every year and bring people in and then cut everybody loose the year after that. It just, it tells the fans that you don't have a plan, you don't know what you're doing, and you're not in it for the long haul.
Yeah. One more thing. Our president, Kevin Giordano, he wants you to write a column on the blog called Reese's Pieces.
Oh, he does. That's I had a broomball team at Cortland called Reese's Pieces. My grad students formed it, and that I would be happy to talk to him about that. It'd be serious, it's funny that if that would materialize, I've been called that so many times since I was in grade school. It would be neat to have that actually used in a positive way, other than just a joke. But you tell him to come and talk to me if he's interested in it. I'll be happy to.
I will.
Thank you, Dr. Reese. I'd like to thank Kevin Murray for joining us in Talking Sports Law, and Mike Proska for presenting on sports marketing. Join us again next week for another episode, and in the meantime, check out our Co-op Confidential series up on the blog now, and follow us on Twitter at